Long before the palace walls, before the crown, before any of this begins, God was already at work. Quietly, carefully. This is the story of a young woman who had lost almost everything: her parents, her home, her people's freedom. An orphan in exile, raised in a land that did not her God. And somehow, against every odds, she ended up wearing a crown in the most powerful palace on earth. She didn't choose that. She didn't plan it. But she was placed there on purpose. God was setting a table, and every detail of her life, every sorrow, every closed door, every unexpected favor had been quietly leading her toward one single terrifying moment of decision. This is the Book of Esther. Now it came to pass in the Trays 7 provinces. Let that sink in for just a moment. From the mountain ranges of India all the way to the desert coasts of Ethiopia, every city, every trade route, every army under one man's hand. This was the most powerful king the ancient world had ever seen, and he wanted everyone to know it. When those 180 days were done, he threw another one, 7 more days, for every last person in the city of Susa. The decorations alone tell you everything you need to know about where this man's heart was. Gold, marble, everything in this scene was screaming one word: look at me. While all of this was happening, Queen Vashti was holding her own feast for the women inside the royal palace. A parallel celebration, elegant and private. 7 days into the celebration, when the wine had been flowing freely and the king's confidence had reached its peak, he sent his servants with a command. Bring Queen Vashti before me. Make sure she is wearing her royal crown, so that I can show her beauty to the people and the officials. The king wanted to put her on display, to parade her before a room full of drunk men like one more beautiful possession, the finest jewel in his collection, but the queen said no.
Go and tell the king, I am not coming.
Just like that, a flat, quiet, devastating refusal.
This isn't just a domestic problem. Queen Vashti has not only wronged the king, but also all the princes and all the people who are in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus. For the queen's behavior will become known to all women, so that they will despise their husbands in their eyes. The solution? Vashti is stripped of her crown.
And the reply pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. A royal decree goes out across the empire.
Every man shall be master of his own house. The throne of queen is now empty.
Then the king's servants who attended him said, Let beautiful young virgins be sought for the king. Then let the young woman who pleases the king be queen instead of Vashti. This thing pleased the king, and he did so. In Shushan the citadel there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. Kish had been carried away from Jerusalem with the captives who had been captured with Jeconiah, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. And Mordecai had brought up Hadassah, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother. The young woman was lovely and beautiful. When her father and mother died, Mordecai took her as his own daughter. So it was, when the king's command and decree were heard, and when many young women were gathered at Shushan the citadel, under the custody of Haggai, that Esther also was taken to the king's palace. Esther had not revealed her people or family, for Mordecai had charged her not to reveal it.
Do not tell them you are a Jew. And every day Mordecai paced in front of the court of the women's quarters, to learn of Esther's welfare and what was happening to her.
Each young woman's turn came to go in to King Ahasuerus after she had completed 12 months' preparation, according to the regulations for the women, for thus were the days of their preparation apportioned, 6 months with oil of myrrh, and 6 months with perfumes and preparations for beautifying women. Thus prepared, each young woman went to the king, and she was given whatever she desired to take with her in quarters to the king's palace. In the evening she went, and in the morning she returned to the second house of the women, to the custody of Shashgaz, the king's eunuch who kept the concubine.
When it was Esther's turn to meet the king, she asked for Heggai's advice, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all who saw her. So Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus. The king loved Esther more than all the other women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen. Then the king made a great feast, the Feast of Esther, for all his officials and servants, and he proclaimed a holiday in the provinces and gave gifts according to the generosity of a king.
Mordecai serves at the king's gate. One day he overhears two of the king's doorkeepers plotting to assassinate King Ahasuerus. He tells Esther, Esther tells the king, crediting Mordecai. The plotters are hanged. The event is recorded in the king's official chronicles. Mordecai's loyalty is written down, but for now, forgotten.
King Ahasuerus promotes a man named Haman, an Agagite, above all the other princes. Every servant at the king's gate bows down and pays homage to Haman. It is the king's command. But Mordecai would not bow or pay homage. Then the king's servants who were within the king's gate said to Mordecai, "Why do you transgress the king's command?" Now it happened, when they spoke to him daily and he would not listen to them, that they told it to Haman, to see whether Mordecai's words would stand, for Mordecai had told them that he was a Jew.
When Haman saw that Mordecai did not bow or pay him homage, Haman was filled with wrath. But he disdained to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had told him of the people of Mordecai. Instead, Haman sought to destroy all the Jews who were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, the people of Mordecai. He approaches the king with a calculated lie.
There is a certain people scattered and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of your kingdom. Their laws are different from all other peoples, and they do not keep the king's laws. Therefore it is not fitting for the king to let them remain. If it pleases the king, let a decree be written that they be destroyed. I will 10,000 talents of silver into the hands of those who do the work, to bring it into the king's treasuries. So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, and the king said to Haman, "The money and the people are given to you, to do with them as seems good to you."
Then the king's scribes were called on the 13th day of the first month, and a decree was written according to all that Haman commanded, to the king's satraps, to the governors who were over each province, the officials of all people, to every province according to its script, and to every people in their language. In the name of King Ahasuerus it was written, and sealed with the king's signet ringers went out, hastened by the king's command, and the decree was proclaimed in Shushan the citadel. So the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city of Shushan was perplexed. When Mordecai learned all that had happened, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes, and went out into the midst of the city. He cried out with a loud and bitter cry. He went as far as the front of the king's gate, for no one might enter the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. And in every province where the king's command and decree arrived, there was great mourning among the Jews, with fasting, weeping, and wailing. And many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and eunuchs came and told her, and the queen was deeply distressed. Then she sent garments to clothe Mordecai and take his sackcloth away from him, but he refuses them. She sends one of the king's chamberlains, Hathach, to find out what is happening. Mordecai tells him everything, the exact amount of money Haman promised to pay, and gives him a copy of the written decree to show Esther.
Command her that she should go in to the king to make supplication to him and plead before him for her people. Hathach returned and told Esther the words of Mordecai. Then Esther spoke to Hathach and gave him a command for Mordecai.
All the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces know that any man or woman who goes into the inner court to the king, who has not been called, he has but one law: put all to death, except the one to whom the king holds out the golden scepter, that he may live. Yet I myself have not been called to go into the king these 30 days.
So they told Mordecai Esther's words. And Mordecai told them to answer Esther, "Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this?" Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai.
Go, gather all the Jews who are present in Shushan, and fast for me, neither eat nor drink for 3 days, night or day. My maids and I will fast likewise, and so I will go to the king, which is against the law, and if I perish, I perish."
So Mordecai did according to all that Esther commanded him. She stands in the inner court of the king's palace, facing the royal throne room. The king sits on his throne opposite the entrance.
When the king saw Queen Esther, she found favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. Then Esther went near and touched the top of the scepter. And the king said to her, "What do you wish, Queen Esther? What is your request? It shall be given to you, up to half the kingdom."
If it pleases the king, let the king and Haman come today to the banquet that I have prepared for him.
The king sends for Haman immediately. At the banquet of wine, the king said to Esther, "What is your petition? It shall be granted you."
My petition and request is this. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition, then let the king and Haman come to the banquet, which I will prepare for them. And tomorrow I will do as the king has said.
Haman leaves the banquet that evening, glowing with pride. But on his way out, he passes Mordecai at the king's gate. Mordecai does not rise, does not tremble, does not bow.
Haman is furious, but he controls himself and goes home. He gathers his wife Zeresh and his friends and boasts about his wealth, his sons, his invitation to dine privately with the king and queen. Scene. Moreover, Haman said, "Besides, Queen Esther invited no one but me to come in with the king to the banquet that she prepared, and tomorrow I am again invited by her, along with the king. Yet all this avails me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate." Then his wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him,
Let a gallows be made, 50 cubits high, and in the morning suggest to the king that Mordecai be hanged on it. Then go merrily with the king to the banquet.
And the thing pleased Haman, so he had the gallows made. That night the king could not sleep. So one was commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Then the king said, "What honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" And the king's servants who attended to him said, "Nothing has been done for him. Who is in the court?"
Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the king's palace to suggest that the king hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him.
The king's servants said to him, "Haman is there, standing in the court."
"Let him come in."
So Haman came in, and the king asked him, "What shall be done for the man whom the king delights to honor?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "Whom would the king delight to honor more than me?" Haman answered the king,
"For the man whom the king delights to honor, let a royal robe be brought which the king has worn, and a horse on which the king has ridden,
which has a royal crest placed on its head. Then let this robe and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that he may array the man whom the king delights to honor. Then parade him on horseback through the city square, and proclaim before him, 'Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delights to honor.' Hurry, take the robe and the horse, as you have suggested, and do so for Mordecai the Jew, who sits within the king's gate." "It shall be done as you command, my lord." Haman hurries home, mourning, his head covered in shame.
If Mordecai, before whom you have begun to fall, is of Jewish descent, you will not prevail against him, but will surely fall before him.
Before they finish speaking, the king's chamberlains arrive to bring Haman to Esther's banquet. As they drink wine at the second banquet, the king again asks Esther, "What is your petition, Queen Esther? It shall be granted you." "What is your petition, Queen Esther?"
If I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we have been sold to be destroyed, to be killed, and to be annihilated. Had we been sold as male and female slaves, I would have held my tongue, although the enemy could never compensate for the king's loss.
The king's blood runs cold.
Who is he? And where is he? Who would dare presume in his heart to do such a thing?
Then the king arose in his wrath from the banquet of wine and went into the palace garden. But Haman stood before Queen Esther, pleading for his life, for he saw that evil against him by the king. When the king returned from the palace garden to the place of the banquet of wine, Haman had fallen across the couch where Esther was. Then the king said, "Will he also assault the queen while I am in the house?" A servant covers Haman's face, the mark of a condemned man.
Take him to the gallows. Look, the gallows, 50 cubits high, which Haman made for Mordecai, who spoke good on the king's behalf, is standing at the house of Haman.
Hang him on it!
The king says Haman is hanged on the very gallows he built for Mordecai. The king's wrath is pacified.
Esther's work isn't finished. The original decree sealed with the king's ring cannot simply be cancelled under Persian law. But Esther falls at the king's feet, weeping, and pleads with him to stop the evil plan of Haman against the Jews. The king extends his golden scepter to her again. She rises.
Let it be written, to revoke the letters devised by Haman, which he wrote to annihilate the Jews who are in all the king's provinces.
For how can I endure to see the evil that will come to my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my countrymen?
The king grants her request. New decree is written, this time allowing the Jews throughout every province to gather and defend their lives, to destroy, kill, and annihilate any armed force that attacks them. Mordecai leaves the king's presence in royal robes of blue and white, wearing a great crown of gold. In Shushan, the people rejoice, and in every province, wherever the new decree reaches, the Jews are joyful. Many people of other nationalities become Jewish, because fear of the Jews has fallen upon them. On the very day Haman had appointed for their destruction, the Jewish people strike back against their enemies. Across 127 provinces they defend themselves. No one can withstand them, because fear of Mordecai and Esther has fallen on every official, every captain, every governor. In Shushan alone,
If it pleases the king, let it be granted to the Jews who are in Shushan to act according to today's decree tomorrow also, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged on the gallows.
it is done. Across the rest of the empire, 75,000 enemies of the Jewish people are defeated.
Mordecai records all of these events and sends letters to the Jewish communities across the Persian Empire, instructing them to celebrate annually. On the 14th and 15th days of the month of Adar, with feasting, joy, and the giving of gifts to one another and to the poor. The festival is called Purim, named after the pur, the lot that Haman had cast to determine the day of destruction. Esther herself writes a second letter confirming these days of Purim, and her decree is recorded in the official chronicles of the Persian Empire. Mordecai the Jew is second in rank to King Ahasuerus, great among the Jews, held in esteem by his many brothers, seeking the welfare of his people and speaking peace to all his countrymen.
Dear viewer, wherever you have found yourself, choose to speak up, for you have been created for such a time as this. God has placed you here for this. Be encouraged.
Thank you for watching, and kindly click on the subscribe button so we can make more videos like this.